Hey everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm Bethany, and today's recipe, I'm gonna be showing you how to make a delicious Italian sausage soup. It's filled with bites of vegetables to make it a little bit heartier and healthier, and it just has a really surprising depth of flavor in it that comes from a few ingredients that we're gonna be using. It is definitely up there in one of my favorite soups that I've ever made. That says a lot because I make a lot of soups. So let's get right into it. All right, so the first thing that we wanna do is get our sausage heated up. So I have a 7-quart Dutch oven pot. And so I'm gonna first put a tablespoon of olive oil in the pot. And then I have 1 pound of Italian sausage here. It's spicy Italian sausage. And mine is in the casing. I'm just gonna remove it from the casing. This was from a local market, so just figured I would take it out of the casing, and I'll break it up in the pot as well. And I really like using a spicy Italian sausage for this soup because it adds so much flavor to the soup, but you could also do a mild Italian sausage or sweet, whatever you like, but I really think that this is the best with spicy. And the sausage itself adds so much flavor to the soup. It has fennel in it, herbs, spices. So this is a big source of flavor for the whole soup. I had to wash my hands after doing that, and I'm gonna up my heat here. It's a little low. We'll just break the sausage up with our wooden spoon. My pot is really low here, so I'm gonna wait a second for the heat to turn up. But we're gonna be cooking this just for, 3 to 4 minutes until the sausage is browned and cooked. But while we do that, we'll chop up our sofrito or our vegetables for the soup. All right, so our sausage is done and it's nicely cooked. I have some browned edges on some of the sausage, which I like, a little bit of texture, but not like on every single bite. So now we're gonna take this out. I'm just gonna use a big slotted spoon that I have and place it on just a bowl that has some paper towels in it, just to kind of soak up a little bit of the extra grease. And we're gonna cook the sofrito and everything in here. It's okay if we leave some of those sausage bits in there. And if you do not want all this grease in your soup, you can drain just a little bit in there. It's not a ton. So we'll set that aside, and then we're gonna cook our sofrito. So now that we removed the sausage, we're gonna add 1 medium to large diced onion. I got onion flying everywhere. It's on the floor, falling out of the pot. So we have 1 medium to large onion, and then I actually measured the vegetables in the sofrito because, sorry, I'm teary-eyed from the onion. But I actually measured the vegetables because when I made this in testing, I found sometimes that I was doing too much vegetables or too little. So I did find, since they're all different sizes, the celery, the carrots, I just felt like I needed to measure it to just have an accurate measurement of that. So we'll do 2 cups of finely diced carrots. I always like to finely dice everything in soups just because I don't like big chunks of vegetables in soups. And then we're gonna do 1 cup of finely diced celery. We'll just stir that in with the nice stuff on the bottom. That'll help flavor the sofrito. And then we're gonna add a nice generous pinch of salt because this is a good amount of vegetables. And I call this a sofrito because that's the Italian term for the aromatics that flavor a lot of the Italian soups and stews. And then in French cooking, it would be called a mirepoix. So really it's just onion, carrot, celery. And then you could put garlic in that too, but that's typically just the 3 of those. So we're gonna cook the vegetables just for 3 to 4 minutes. We just want them to soften a little bit. We don't wanna brown them. I always kind of note that because if you brown them, then it changes the flavor of the soup. So just softly cook them. All right, so our vegetables have been cooking for about 4 minutes. They're nice and soft now. And I'm going to now add my garlic, and I have about 5 to 6 large cloves here. And I'm actually not gonna use my knife. I got a garlic press, thanks to Drew. The reason that I don't like garlic presses, and I haven't for years, is because I hated cleaning my mom's when I was younger. But this one Drew got on Amazon, and it's super easy to clean. You can take that out. Voila, makes my life very easy. So I probably won't use this all the time, but I'll use it today. And then you kind of need a paring knife to cut the top off like that. All right, I tried doing 2 at once and that didn't work. So we'll mix that garlic in, cook that for just about 30, 60 seconds, as we always do with garlic. It doesn't need a lot of time. All right, so after the garlic, we're gonna add a surprising ingredient for soup. We're gonna add a little bit of white wine. I'm using Pinot Grigio, and I'm gonna actually just use 1/3 cup to deglaze the pan. This really adds such a robust flavor to any recipe, but especially this soup. So we're just gonna add that to our vegetables, cook off a little bit of that alcohol. So we're gonna cook that wine with the vegetables for just like 2 minutes. It's gonna help flavor the vegetables. I was gonna add my rosemary, but this is a very sad, skinny rosemary sprig. Thank you. So we're gonna add a little bit more rosemary than that. But I like to just do rosemary on the sprig because the whole thing has a lot of flavor in it. But I wanted to share something. So in my pasta fagioli recipe, I had some people that didn't like the rosemary that broke off from the sprig. So what you could do is either take it off, chop it up, put it in the soup, and you don't have to do the sprig. Or you could use a tea bag like this and just put it in that, and it'll infuse the rosemary flavor in it. You just have to like tie the top. And then if you're using dried rosemary, then you can throw it in the soup, same thing, or just put it in like a tea bag or something to just infuse the flavor rather than actually having the pieces of it in the soup. So I'm gonna do 2 sprigs in there. And I like to do it in this step just because it really helps, as I've said in other recipes, the herbs just bloom in flavor once it hits the heat. All right, so now we can add our sausage back in here. Just mix that in there. Next, we're gonna add 2 quarts of chicken stock. And then actually, before I finish this one off, I'm gonna save it because I wanna use it to puree some of our beans. Next, we're gonna do chickpeas or garbanzo beans. And I had 2 14-ounce cans for this, but I'm only gonna add a part of the beans to the soup. So my reasoning for not using all of the beans is because this soup, sometimes you want to thicken it a little bit so it's not super brothy, and you can do that in a really easy way by pureeing some of the beans. So we're gonna be doing that, and so I just decided to do about 3/4 of a can rather than a whole can because I still want bites of beans in it. So we're just gonna puree this with some of our broth before we add everything into there. Okay, so I just pureed it for about 15 seconds just for it to be creamy. It doesn't really make the soup super creamy. It just helps it thicken it a little bit and adds like a little touch of that rather than adding cream ourselves or thickening it with flour. And then to add a really nice umami deep flavor to the soup, we're going to use my secret ingredient, the Parmigiano Reggiano rind, and we'll just put that right in the soup. I like to use a nice large one for this soup. I am coming down to the wire. I have like almost none left lately. And I did want to just mention that some of my rinds, I've noticed they'll have like a stamp of ink on them, and just a reminder that the rind is the outer shell that Parmigiano Reggiano is aged in. And so sometimes they'll stamp that with like dates or numbers. And if it has ink on it, I won't put that in my soup. So I'll always just cut off that part because I don't really want that to go in my food. So just be mindful that if your rind has like ink or a stamp or something on it, you can just cut that part off and not put it in the dish. Then we'll season this with half a teaspoon of salt, and we're also gonna season it at the end to taste. I just don't wanna over salt this dish because it already has a good amount of salt with the sausage, so it's better to just pull back a little bit, and then we'll season to taste at the end. And we'll do 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. We'll stir this all together. It already smells so good. You can smell that white wine, and you will continue to smell it as this cooks. All right, then we're gonna partially cover our pot while it cooks for most of the time. We still have another ingredient that we'll add at the end. And we're gonna cook this for about 35 to 40 minutes, just for all the flavors to develop, all those vegetables to soften a little bit. And I'll put it on kind of a gentle simmer, kind of like at medium to low heat, and just stir it every so often. You want to make sure that that parm rind is not slipping to the bottom. We don't want it to burn. So, yep, we'll cook it, and then we'll add our remaining ingredient at the end. All right, so our soup has been cooking for about 35, 40 minutes. Smells delicious, looks great. All right, now we're going to take out our parm rind and our rosemary sprigs. There is our parm rind. And you can really smell the parm rind flavor in this soup. It just, like I said, it adds just a really nice salty umami type of flavor. I can't find the other rosemary sprig. I'm like, did I already take it out? So we'll find it when we find it. So we have our big bundle of kale here, and I am using a Dino or Tuscan kale. It has lots of different names to it. Drew actually had to drive quite far away because we couldn't find any grocery stores. They were all sold out of it. But this is my favorite kale to use for this soup. And the other kales are like a curlier kale, which you could totally use. I just find that this one is just a little bit easier to eat. And what I'm doing is I'm just gonna remove the kale from the stem, just because the stem in this kale is just kind of not fun to eat. So makes it easier to eat in the soup. And I just have a huge bundle of it. It should come out to about 4 to 5 cups, roughly. That amount, you can add as much or as little kale as you'd like. And we'll just roughly chop this up. I like to make sure that it is in some nice bite-sized pieces, just because it can be a little difficult to eat the soup if it's really big pieces of kale. All right, then I'm gonna add this to the soup. Kale is a little bit, has more of a bite to it, so it does take just a few more minutes than spinach would to cook in with the soup. We'll stir that in there. Before I let the kale cook a little bit, I'm just gonna taste the broth. I wanna just make sure if I need to salt it a little bit more. It tastes great, but it does need a pinch of salt. Okay, so now I'm gonna cover this, and I want the kale to wilt a little bit more, so I'll cover it on a gentle simmer, just let it cook for about 5 more minutes, and then we can serve it up and taste it. All right, so we're gonna taste the soup. I'm gonna put a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano on top. We had the rind in there, so we gotta serve it with some cheese. And wanted to share that we have Drew's beautiful sourdough here that we're gonna serve with this soup. This is probably one of my favorite things to eat, like ever. I mean, who doesn't love homemade bread? But especially sourdough. And Drew and I have eaten our fair share of sourdough because we used to live out in Los Angeles and got tartine out there. So if you guys would like to see this recipe on our website, or even Drew demonstrate it on YouTube, feel free to let me know in the comments. It is so good. He's been perfecting it for years, and it goes great with this soup. It's so good. I know I say everything is so good, but this really is so good. There's no other way to say it. It's delicious. The broth has just so much robust flavor in it from the white wine that we used, and then that Parmesan rind in there, and the spicy Italian sausage. So I actually never had sausage in a soup. It wasn't really a meat that I thought to put in a soup, but my cousin's wife, Lauren, gave me a soup very similar to this, and it was just so delicious. I was like, I have to make my own version of it. So that's what you have today. So thank you, Lauren, for the inspiration for this. So yeah, love all the bites of vegetables in it. It's just a really nice hearty soup, but what I like is that we blended the chickpeas so it's not super brothy, and the liquid in it actually has a little bit of body in it without using flour or anything like that to thicken it. So it's delicious and perfect for the weather we're experiencing. It's so gloomy today. We're about to get hit with another ice storm. I'm really ready for winter to be over, but we'll be eating all the soups that we can in the meantime, and also with sourdough bread. Or you could pair this with my rosemary garlic bread, which would be phenomenal with this because this has rosemary in it. It would pair perfectly. So I hope you guys get to try this recipe, especially if you're dealing with some colder weather. It's the perfect warming soup and just so flavorful and delicious. So as always, feel free to let me know if you tried in the comments. Thank you so much for liking the videos, subscribing, commenting. I truly appreciate it so much. And I'll catch you in the next recipe, and I'll see you in the comments.